Hey, so it is Friday, and it's not the end of the whole week, but it is the end of like the work week. And I wanted to do a little assessment because this week was great. It was so productive. It was very and like productive in different ways. I was able to do a lot of cleaning, a lot of organizing, a lot of tidying up, and I also was able so I got stuff away. And then I also yesterday I was able to write. I basically did that like the whole day, and it was great. I was I it was I don't know how to explain. It just made me so happy. I feel so fulfilled. I'm so excited about my novel and about like the future. I want to finish this book. I want to finish this series. I want to write more in this world. I'm very invested, and I'm not only able to kind of like to write, but the things that I'm writing, like their quality too, which is important. It's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. So I am really happy with how things are turning out. Today I ended up we did a lot of things. I went to the dentist at the health center because I've been having some sensitivity, particularly with like cold things, and it kind of like told me to use those specific like Sensodyne and a specific I'm buying this Colgate, and it is for sensitivity, and I'm gonna use it for 30 days. If it doesn't work, then I have to go back there so we can have like situation, proper consultation, all that. So that was good. And then after that I went to the mall. I went, I was on foot. It was about like 40 minutes walking. Oh yeah, before we went to because basically my mom and I wanted to get to get very early at the health center, but it was raining. So like around the time my dad was leaving, which is about like an hour and a half later, after what we kind of like wanted to leave, it stopped raining. So we went there, and so I was exercising. So I exercised for like half an hour, and then I had this I ended up going, and because there's some stuff that I had to recycle, and it is at the mall that they had like the machine for me to put the things to recycle, and because I did a lot of cleaning regarding like my room, and also helped around the house. For example, today my mom, she was changing the bed. When you change the bed, you have to change everything else too. So I helped her, and but I went, and I also ended up doing some grocery shopping. Like my mom sent me like a list, and I got all the stuff there, and I'm happy with the stuff I got. Like I got good deals. Oh yeah, like the dental, well, whatever. Kind of like lost my train of thought. But yeah, so and then again I ride with my dad, and then in the afternoon I ended up exercising a little bit more. I'm also painting. Like my mom, now that she changed the bed, because before the bed was against the window, so like now there's like this space, and she was thinking about getting a painting there, and I already have a painting, but like there you can fit two paintings. So I end up start painting it like the base color, and then it's going to be abstract, and I'm going to try to make it similar to the other one, and they're not going to be identical, but like they're going to be one talking to the other. So I did some painting, and ended up painting like a lot of other things. I'm kind of like excited about this. I've been doing my bios recently. I have these two here. I haven't finished them, but I've been doing this, and yeah, and I'm happy with like the stuff that I'm consuming, because I feel that it's all like either been getting me to want to write more, so it's been getting me like inspired, giving me ideas, and make me reflect on my own storytelling. So I'm happy with that as well. But yeah, so I ended up so today I ended up, what did I do that it took some time? I did laundry, I extended everything, but yeah, but basically I took a nap after lunch. But yeah, and we're gonna have a celebration for my bro. Basically that's much where we're living, in like an hour or something, an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, because my brother, he turned 18 yesterday, so we're gonna have a little get together, a little family get together to celebrate his birthday. And I'm excited for the food. I'm excited for the time I'm gonna spend with my family. I'm excited for everything. I'm already ready. Like it's early, but I'm ready to go. I think that depending on like how long it takes, because I think that the panel, like it is almost dry, and I don't want it to be like 100% dry. I want a little, something, because that way I think it was going to work better. But yeah, so this week has been very productive. I'm really happy with, I'm happy with every single day, and I'm happy with with everything overall, and I hope things continue to work out this way. Also, change medication, so I'm not really it doesn't seem that, because I was kind of getting a little manic, we kind of changed a little bit, and seems to have, I reached a ceiling, so that is also, pretty great. I'm in a really good moment where basically everything is working out, not just because things are working out, but my brain is very tuned to everything. So basically, I am, I'm finding solutions, I'm finding, deals. So, and that is really helping. And it's also my outlook on life. But yeah, that being said, this was my week. Really happy with how things, have gone, and I also hopeful for the next week. But what I also wanted to talk about, I wanted to reflect. I think I mentioned this in the other video. End up never really getting too deep into it, but basically the whole who I am. I'm trying to, nobody is asking me, who I am. They might ask me to describe myself like that, but I do want to have words, I want to, have something to say. And right now, I know things that I want to be, but I don't know if they are, who I am. Some of them they're not. I wish that that was me. So, what are some traits that I can say? Because this goes back, to when I was younger, to when I was a kid. And, I used to be perceived as very dedicated person, very industrious. And for so long, since during my adult life, so the past decade, I'm being very, I've been really questioning whether that is the case or not. And I have to kind of give myself a break, because sometimes the reason why I'm not dedicated and industrious is because I'm going through a depressive episode. So there's moments like that. So I have to be kind. Also, I have ADHD, so I have to. My brain works, in a slightly different way than the average person. So I have to make sure that I'm catering to myself, and I'm kind of picking the best strategies for me to work through things. Hey. Okay, so I just got a message. It's kind of one of those Amber alerts, but it's not really, for that. It's just to kind of let you know that it's going to rain a lot, and then there's going to be a lot of chaos because of it. They talk usually about specific things, but I didn't read it, but I don't know what it is. But what I was, saying is that for so long, I was can I really call myself industrious and dedicated? And I think that this goes back to my association with kind of with my academic life. So when I was in middle school and high school, those were things that I could comfortably say that I was, because when it came to my to school, I was very dedicated, I was very industrious, I cared a lot about it, and I made a lot of effort, and I had also good results, so that's good. But then after school, because I have school for 3 years before I started college. And the thing about college is that my first year, I continued at the same pace that I was kind of doing things when I was in high school. But from then on, I really let it all go in some ways. I let myself go, and there's a lot of things that happened, like the pandemic, and the whole online learning did not really work for me. But I think the most important thing to take into account is that I've learned that what are the best ways. I actually don't know what are the best ways for me to learn, but I do know what doesn't work for me. So it's important. I learned a lesson, and that's going to be a lesson that I'm going to take with myself for a long time, to the end of my life. But also something that I have to consider is that I don't care so much about my academic life anymore, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think I used to feel guilty about it, but right now, not so much. I'm because I feel it's almost this chapter of my life has come to an end. I haven't finished school. I haven't graduated yet, and I'm probably going to start a new course this semester, and that means that it's going to be 4 more years. So I'm still there, but it is the type of thing that I'm now, when I think about it, I'm yeah, that is no longer part of my identity. I mean, you are comprised of everything that you do, so there's that, but it is not at the forefront, I think, my academic life. And I think without it, I kind of lost my guiding start. I mean, this I didn't work in English, but I kind of like lost, my north. I lost, like that reference. And there is nothing wrong with like being confused and figuring things out, but it was something that followed me for like a long time, and something that bothered me. Right now, I'm just like, I think that I'm basing myself on other things, so like, because I'm talking about the question who I am, but also the question what I like, like what do I do, because also like the question like who I am, like people can also answer with like their profession, and this is something that I think that if you asked me like a decade ago, I would definitely, like find that I thought that I would define myself with like my work, whatever I was doing, and like right now I'm kind of it doesn't really come up, like it is not it really something, once again, it's not something that is, I mean, like you have to work because you need money, but I find that like my professional life, I thought it was going to be way more exciting and fulfilling than it is, and it's totally fine if like it isn't fulfilling, that if you're not deriving any pleasure from it, but yeah, so like, so there's that. Also like what constitutes work, because I think for me, like when I was younger, I thought like work is something you do to get, like you get money from working, and like now my income like comes from different things. Some of them, I mean, everything requires like labor, like you're making an effort, but it comes from different things, and yeah, there's nothing wrong. It's good to diversify your income, so you don't have just like one thing. Like this month is a good example of that, because I lost my biggest source of income, but that's okay. We're gonna fix it next month, and then like I had my savings. I mean, I'm not happy to use them because I wanted, but like you save them for situations like this. So there's that. But just so yeah. So like I don't want to define myself by necessarily. I don't care to define myself by what I graduate in. Like that was something that I also thought that was going to be the case. And yeah, so like now I know that like whatever I graduate as and whatever I work as, like it's going to be part of my identity for sure, but it's not really, like if you ask me who I am, like it was not in the top three, basically. At least I don't want it to be. I want, like an old notion that I've heard about many times, people saying how like we're so focused on work that we kind of like end up losing grasp of some of the other things. Like we ask somebody to talk about themselves, they're going to talk about their work, and I usually, it's a little cliche, I know, but it's also something that like right now I'm like, what, yes, I don't want to be defined by that, particularly because there's just so many, as I said, like there's so many, I'm doing many things for money, so, and it's kind of like weird because I'm like, I can I get a job? I don't know if I can. For example, I sell stuff online. Have a little this website / app that you sell secondhand stuff. You can also sell like stuff that is new, but like it. The point is kind of like secondhand. And I sell stuff there, and I make money there. But would I call that my job? So I don't know. I also do some odd jobs for people in my family. Like they want me to translate something, they want me to fill a form, they want me to, so like I also make money that way, but like I don't call that a job. So it's kind of like, I think my ideas, they're not shifting right now, they've been shifting for many years. Right now I'm just kind of like acknowledging it. But yeah, so so work and school, like I don't want to use them to define me. I want to think of myself as a person, and then that's the question: can I still call myself industrious? And it's interesting that I'm saying this, because this particular week I would 100% say yes. Because as I said, it was an extremely productive week for me. Everything worked out perfectly. There's probably something that went wrong, but I cannot even think of it. So like if I had this week, I would kind of like be like, yes, I am an industrious person. And honestly, I'm feeling more confident saying that, because I think for the longest time, like for many years, I didn't feel comfortable saying that. But now I'm like, what, that is the case. Because also, as I said, like I'm thinking about myself like industrious in terms of school and work. And sometimes like I question that, but in everything else, my mom says this thing that like if you're gonna do something, do like the whole job. And it's something that usually guides me. I'm like, what, I'm gonna do this, I'm going to do a good job, I'm gonna do everything, I'm not just gonna half-ass it. And that is something that manifests in like so many different things. And like this week, as I said, was a good example, because everything I did, I was like, I'm doing the full job, I'm not half-assing this. Like for example, if you just like living things the way that they were before you started, make sure that everything is in place. Like if you pick something up, like live it the way that it is and all that. So it can be like small things, but I think that if you have this dedication with small things, it's going to translate to like bigger ones. And that is something that I want to be the person. I want to be the person who is kind of I guess industrious is the word. So yeah, let me go with industrious. That is going to be one trait. I think I'm trying to find three. I find that I'm gonna say something that I'm a little embarrassed to say, but so what? Like, who cares? Like, why? What's the worst that can happen if I say this? But I kind of wanna be perceived as funny. Like I kind of want that. I don't know. I mean, like, and there have been like moments in my life where I think that, because it's also like a very sometimes the way you tell whether you're funny, you have to do with the reception, how people react to that. And I'm a very introverted person. I can be kind of like shy, so I don't really interact much. So I don't have that much I don't have much of a frame of reference for me to say. But I will say that there's been things in my life that have gotten a reaction, and I realized that it can be because of like of mental illness, neurodivergence, mix of the two, and just me being the way that I am. And I don't know, I think that sometimes I say some things that I think are very funny, like at least for me, I'm like replaying them, and I almost wish there was somebody else there to see. So yes, I'm not gonna put this in the top three, but I just wanted to kind of like say that I don't think I ever said it out loud. It's never really something that like historically I haven't cared about. But then recently, I mean the past couple of years, I'm kind of like me observing, like, oh, I'm noticing that there is a part of me that's kind of like craving that response. It's not something particularly, I don't know, I think compared to other stuff, it's not really the thing, but but it is. I mean, it feels good to kind of like just say this, because it means that like it's no longer a sensitive topic, right? That I can just admit to it. So yeah, so I have industrious and hardworking. Maybe, yeah, industrious and hardworking, they're different things, but they're similar. But like once again, the hardworking, it goes very similar to industrious. Is that when I was younger, because like what you have to do when you're a kid is kind of like school, and I had school and I had a lot of extracurriculars, and I was doing lots of things, and I was doing all of those things while I was thriving. So I really thought of myself like I'm hardworking. But then so many things happen in my life that make me question that. Also, like, there are some blips, I would call them. There are some moments where like I was I think that when I was younger, it was very uncharacteristic of me to kind of like not I'm back. But so I used to think I was hardworking, and then I thought I was not. I thought that I was lazy, and then there's a lot to do with, as I said, depression, and me having ADHD, being kind of like undiagnosed with ADHD. So I didn't really have always like the best strategies to help me, and so yeah, there was a lot of like self-hate like my life, because I felt kind of useless. I felt that I was lazy, that I was incompetent, and those are feelings that I ended up like suppressing at the beginning. Because I think when I was in school, because I had results, I was kind of like realized, of course that is not true. Look at all the things I'm doing, and I'm doing well. But then I graduated, as I said. I no longer had school, I no longer had that frame of reference, and then what ended up happening is that I had those feelings. And when I had my diagnosis of me having ADHD, it explained a lot, and also like it contextualized a lot of things for me, and also made me feel like, okay, I'm not lazy, I'm not a piece of shit, like I'm not useless. It's just that I'm trying to work in a way that is not like the best for my head, for how my head works, and that fixed some things, but I still struggled. And then there's the whole depression thing, so like there was that. But I started getting medicated, and like getting stable, like that is a challenge. So I've kind of like come to accept that at least like half maybe not half, but like 40% of the time, like I'm not going to be my utmost self. Of course, like that this hopefully like this the amount of time is going to decrease, because I'm finally finding medication that is working. But it still is kind of like the case that I was half the time it feels like I mean, it's not necessarily half the time, but like it feels like that, you know, like that I am not really at my best, that I'm not really capable of like working at the, for example, the pace that I worked at this week. So that is, you know, something to keep in the back of my mind. But that was something that for many years I felt that way. So I felt all those negative emotions, and it didn't help anything. But also, as I said, I suppressed a lot of them, so I wasn't directly, you know, processing, you know, that. And it wasn't until like much later, because also sometimes, like I think I have to talk about trauma, because sometimes trauma kind of like paralyzed me in some ways, or at least like it set me on this spiral, you know, and that got in the way of like me producing, me doing things. So now with like, you know, better strategies for ADHD, being stable, you know, with medication regarding like me not being depressed, and you know, like no longer having my traumas be so traumatizing, you know, like affecting me so much. I really am at a point where I'm kind of like capable of like so much more and so many things. And also like it's kind of crazy because, you know, like if I say these things, for example, to my parents, they're going to be like, no, of course not just because they're my parents, but like they'll cite different things that I've done. And it feels like I think expectations, they are also they had also to do with like me thinking whether or not I'm hardworking, because if you don't do, if you can't accomplish something, you can't finish something, you might kind of like question and be like, did I do as much as I could, did I, you know, work hard enough? And I think, you know, you also have to accept that some things are not within your control. When I was younger, I had a lot of issues with that because I didn't really want to admit that you know, like there were things outside of my control, there were things that could happen, that there was nothing I could do, that they would define my path, they would define my life. You know, but like right now I'm just, you know, like, yeah, it happens. That's kind of like how things work. There are these elements outside of control. I've kind of like adjusted to them. Not necessarily that I am foreseeing them, but you know, like when they do happen, I'm like, that's okay. You know, let's try again, let's try it differently, let's try something else. And I think that is the most important thing, is not having situations happen, but being able to process, you know, like the emotions that you feel when they happen, and also have like an action plan for you to follow after that. So yeah, basically, you know, a lot like different things changed, and right now I feel like I can call myself hardworking again, you know. And as I said, like the barrier was very, you know, like internal. The thing preventing me from saying that, because it's almost like, you know, like the thing about me, I'm stating that I am these things, I'm putting this out there, which means that people can react to this. And I think that was a fear of like me saying something like that, people being like no, and then cite all the examples, but like nobody knows the examples, so it's just like me in my head, you know, like telling me that I am. Is this imposter syndrome? Could be, you know, the case. But yeah, so I have industrious, I have hardworking, and am I? See, even now I'm kind of like questioning whether I can say this, you know, whether, you know, it is true. But yeah, what is the third, you know, trait that I can have? I can say I'm opinionated, which, but like that, you know, one of the top three, you know, like, because I have opinions on things. But I will say that lately, like this past few years, I've been trying to remove myself from these situations where I should kind of like have, I mean, I always have opinions, but situations in which I have to voice certain opinions, because I'm just tired. Basically, I'm just really kind of like, there's some conversations that I've been having for the longest time, you know, because it's not just with like a person, you know. So there's so many things that right now I'm just like, you know what, like it's not that I want the path of, you know, of least resistance. It's just that I don't know, I'm tired. Like I don't want to have those conversations anymore. Like nobody's changing their mind. It's just a lot of, you know, like you submitting yourself, subjecting yourself to, you know, like stupid shit, and very yeah, I feel it feels very pointless, basically, you know, because I think that that makes me question, like, have I ever wanted, you know, to be have discussions and conversations because I wanted to I don't know, because I wanted to change people's minds, or did I just want to kind of like, you know, like impose on people, you know, kind of like win a debate. I think that was, you know, something that was kind of the case. Also, like, it's an interesting thing, because when I was younger, I was really into debating, and I usually did so well in those situations. And I think I was really riding that wave. And then, you know, I feel like you get older, you realize, like, because, you know, like, you might be the best at debate in the environment that I think, for example, like in middle school, I would say I was kind of like the best at debate. But then I went to high school and then suddenly I was not, the best anymore, because there are different skills that people have. There are different things that come into play. Because as much as I wish things were about like arguments, like things making sense, a lot of it has to do with people's charisma and them kind of like charming. And I think that factor, I don't know if I have. What I had were like good arguments, and as I said, it's not always enough. And then I think it got like even worse when I left high school, because also like I think that the nature of those debates like also changed, because like those that were happening in like an academic, also like I don't keep up with the news and with things so much anymore, and that also impacts how I, because before I always had like a thought and opinion on everything because I was on top of everything, and like right now I'm not. So there's some things that I'm like, why I don't want to have an opinion on this. I don't care, like what's the fucking, like I was kind of like just searching for opportunities for me to like impose myself, as I said. It was not necessarily about the reality, the truth of the argument, and all of that. And also I like the feeling of like riling somebody up, so I enjoy that. I think it just gave me a sense of control in my life because everything else was falling into this chaos. Because that was something that I really, but yes, like that was just something that I wanted. And then and for many years that was me. And then recently I've been more like, I don't, I feel like I don't need that anymore. Like I think I have enough stability in my life that I guess I'm also more confident in myself and in the way that I think, that I don't feel like the need to kind of like impose my way of thinking. I'm just kind of like that. So yeah, opinionated. I think that it is true I have opinions, but I don't think that I don't know, like I think that some years ago, like that would be more fitting because of like how I was living my life, and always looking for this argument for possible not conflicts, but like confrontations, you could say. But yeah, so that was opinionated. What else? I am, like something like, can I say that I'm smart? That is, also something that it used to be kind of like being intelligent was kind of like the most important thing for me for so many years when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult. Right now is when I'm finally at this point where I'm like, yeah, I do think I'm smart, but I'm not the smartest, and I don't have to be the smartest, because I feel like when I was younger I really had this way of like I have to be the smartest, and like you can measure it like more worldwide, so it would be kind of like the situation of like I want to be the smartest in this context. But like the smart thing has to do with like academic in my academic life, my academic performance, and like those two things are not necessarily the same. Like you can have good grades because you kind of like memorize something, not necessarily because like you're taking it. So that was also like something that I think in high school I started to face the fact that like, oh, I'm not the smartest. I might have the best grades, but that doesn't necessarily make me the smartest person here. There's also something important is adaptability. And I think that was something I struggled with a little bit when I was younger, but eventually I got there. Today I think that I do pretty well with like changing, the changing of things in my life, and like pivoting and all of that. So that's no longer an issue. But I used to struggle with that when I was younger. But yeah, so I think like it's kind of like feels like I'm cheating for saying like smart as a personality trait, because it's so basic. It's some of like those things that, as I said, like it's very basic. But like it could be sort of one. But it is also something that, as I said, like I think I lost my confidence a lot. Like once I left high school. In high school, I was already questioning myself in a lot of things, and then when my life didn't go as planned, when I was 18, all the way back in 2016, like things started to fall apart, and I, like all my plans, like nothing was working, things were not happening, and I think that increased that feeling of like I'm a failure, I'm incompetent, I'm useless, and all of that, and yeah, so I think like it started there, and then I think when I got into college, my first year made me feel like I was smart again, because I did pretty well, like in the first and second semester, so there was that. And then after like it happened in the 2020, the pandemic came, and I wasn't performing well, I wasn't understanding things, I was struggling to kind of like grasp some things, and I know that like my mental health and my neurodivergence, there's a part that they play. But you know, like when you're feeling like shit, like those things, they don't cut it, you know. I mean, right now maybe, but like when I was younger, not so much. And then I don't know, like I stopped caring about being smart. I think that was, you know, the moment that I let that in the past, you know, like I left that in the past. I let myself go, but like in a good way, not in a, you know, bad way. It's just that I kind of like tell myself, okay, so what if I'm not smart? Because I think that was, you know, something I was, you know, like walking around like that possibility, you know, and I didn't really have any answers or whatever. So I was, um, yeah, I didn't have, you know, answers, and I think I was suppressing the idea that maybe I wasn't smart, and then it wasn't until, you know, that moment that I was like, okay, if I'm not smart, so what? Because that's pretty much what you want. You don't necessarily need, you want to not want reassurance, you know, because if you're kind of like you're thinking about yourself, thinking about certain personality traits, and the absence of it, you know, like it stabilizes you, like that's not good. So because then you make an effort to convince yourself that you are that thing, and that's very, you know, that's very unpredictable, because things might happen in your life that will disprove that being the case. So what you need is to not care. And I think that was the beginning of the journey of like me just looking for, you know, other for different identity. And I think that when I started my internship back at the, you know, at the end of 2019, was December 2019, I was there for almost 2 years, and it was interesting because I kind of reinvented myself, you know, the way that I was there. Like it was very, I don't know, like it was a version of myself that I wanted to be, but I had never really been before. And then basically started being like that. But I mean, it did imply maybe by my actions that like I used to be like that before, but that wasn't the case. But you know, I enjoy having that experience of like just being a more carefree, cooler version of myself, more experienced, you know, like with, you know, different things. So that was, you know, a fun experience that really helped me heal. You know, like it really did help me. You know, because I think that I couldn't let go of like certain versions of myself, and that was one that, you know, I could kind of like I could be that. You know, a lot of things. I mean, if I'm thinking about it, like there was a lot of implications of things that didn't really happen, or sometimes not even like an implication. Like you kind of like you present yourself as something, people fill in, you know, the gaps, and sometimes, you know, like those feelings, they're not great. But I don't think I've ever like lied directly. But you know, there's definitely things that have been said that I was just like, true. But yeah, but anyway, so like that was an interesting experience, and I think that was the time that because I think that is something about college that also made me very anxious, you know, is that I didn't want to not know. I didn't want to struggle. I wanted to get everything at first, and if I didn't, like once again, I felt stupid, and that was not, you know, how. And that's not how I wanted. That's not how I feel right now. You know, I think right now, like I have a lot of love for myself, and I'm also patience. You know, for those moments where, you know, you're not at your best. But it was interesting because I think that that, you know, created the barrier, you know, for me, you know, when it comes to college, that was only broken like many years later, not many, but like a couple years later. And there was, and I'm all the better off for it, but it was, you know, something. And I think that this experience, you know, like I think it was the first time, like when I did this first internship. This is not my first internship, it's my first internship when I was in college. And it was an interesting situation because yeah, because like I wasn't, for the first time in my life, being smart, you know, being intelligent wasn't part of like my identity. You know, that was not, you know, what people, it's not that necessarily people thought I was stupid, but like that was not, you know, like top 5 things, you know, about me. So that was very liberating. You know, I was able to really flourish because of that. You know, like there were mistakes made, you know, as it often happens, but like nothing wrong with that. You know, like learning, and then you move on, and that is kind of, I don't know. So yeah, I think that finally, like right now, because that is the thing. For so long, for example, I feared that I was lazy. Like that was almost like, you know, forbidden word for me. Like I couldn't even like process that. And well, so like that issue was me kind of like no longer caring about whether I was lazy or not. Same thing with like me being industrious, hardworking, all of that. Like like no longer caring if I'm not that thing. Like just like, okay, if I'm this thing, that is okay. If I'm not, it's also okay. So being okay with things is kind of the way. Naturally, like this is hard, easier, said than done. But if you manage to kind of like to do that, it will change your life, for the better. So yeah, so that is basically kind of like the key in what I'm trying to do at all times. If I feel that something, I'm caring too much about something, some personality trait, some characteristic, like I have to try. I mean, of course, as I said, like it is a process for you to kind of like get to the right point, but that's pretty much what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to no longer care, so like if I'm this thing, great. If I'm not this thing, also great. It doesn't matter. And I think the way I'm saying it is kind of like it's probably leading to maybe some I don't know, like it might not sound particularly healthy, but I promise that like the way that is happening, like it is healthy. It is, the way I am, like at least regarding this, like I'm happier, I'm healthier, I'm sane, which is something that for the longest time I don't even know if I could say that I was. I was, I was at the brink of insanity sometimes, and it's really great for me to be here. And being here, healthy and stable, it's kind of like it is the work of my medication. Yes, it's the work of therapy. Yes, it's the work of like healthy habits. Like exercising, eating good food, and all of that is also like the consequence of like you're not drinking, not smoking, not ingesting other things. Like so, yeah, all those things they help a lot. But I think it's also like your mentality, like your mindset is also very important. You have to kind of like have a healthy relationship with yourself. You have to like be at ease with yourself and at peace with yourself. And the way, so if something, there's some turmoil there, like you have to address it. And what I find in myself is that a lot of the time, like if I'm struggling with like some fantasy, something that I wanted to do and it should be and not, what really helps is for me to kind of like break that down into like what am I trying to be here, and then try, of course, like some things that keep coming back, even things that I would say that like I've been able to overcome. Sometimes you're going to be a little more vulnerable and you're going to struggle with that, but it's part of life. I think that if you struggle for like one day, it's okay. But there are some things that I'm like, why do I care so much about this? Why is this so important? So for example, something that I'm struggling with right now, it has to do with coolness. I kind of like realize that I would like to be cool. Like, and of course, like this is very vague, can mean lots of things, but basically I never really been cool. Like that's never really been something that has been, I have never really been perceived as that. And nothing wrong with that. It's just that I don't know if this is not necessarily, I think this is a very common thing. I think people in general, like they really people want to be cool. I think that is something like when you're a teenager, like I think it might be more pressing in your teenage years or young adult years. And I'm at this point where I'm like, I'm no longer a young adult, I think, like I'm 10 years ahead of adult, so I'm not sure. But it is something that I'm like thinking, I think it's because I've already addressed so many other things, and right now I'm like, okay, why do I want this so much? Why do I care? And I haven't really gotten to the bottom of this because, like there are other things that like, because ultimately I think it's all about safety, and about like you feeling insecure in yourself. It's about stability, and so I don't know necessarily what in my life would be more stable if I were cool, but like there's a connection there. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, but this is something that I've been like, okay, because I think about, for example, when I was a teenager, back when I was like in high school, and I wasn't cool, and I also I thought I didn't really want to be cool. I didn't really care. To be fair, I didn't care about it at that point in time. Like I was really traumatized. I was thinking about many other things. So maybe like this is a late blooming thing. Like right now, I never wasn't happening before, and like it's happening right now. I don't know. But it is something that I have to kind of like break it down, because I'm seeing this mostly in my fantasies. Like that is pretty much where I'm seeing kind of like that impacting. But so I'm gonna explore it. I'm going to see what it is. But it is something that I'm like, why do I care about this? And the solution is for me to no longer care about whether I'm cool or not. And it's interesting because some days I really don't care, but then there are others that I do. But like that is just something that I'm going on. And this, as I said, like it's funny because like it's something that has been here for years, but because there were other more pressing issues, like I wasn't really thinking too much about it. So right now it's like when that's starting, and I don't know. as I said, like this is kind of like, I guess, and it's also good because this is such, you know, a normal thing, such, you know, like complacent thing. Like I don't have to be kind of like concerned that I don't know, because like sometimes like I want things that they lead to dangerous situations. You know, I want to be something, and then the way that I feel like I want to prove to myself that I am this thing involves like very risky behavior. So it's good that, you know, I'm not doing it. So like it's good that that is not happening. This particular, at least so far, like the whole being cool thing hasn't really led to, you know, any risky behaviors, anything that could, you know, jeopardize myself emotionally, physically, you know, like professionally, academically, and that's how I want to keep it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this up right now. Like this video was a mess, but I'm happy with this mess because basically, like I think I got a lot of stuff off my chest, and hopefully I'm gonna, you know, the next time talking about this, I'll have some more answers. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes like I talk a lot about like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then I don't necessarily show that, you know, at least when it comes, you know, to my head. And today I'm trying to list this three, you know, personality traits. I was really, you know, I got me, you know, thinking, because also like I think like my thinking hasn't been very regular, you know, like I'm saying like I'm gonna think about this because it's important, but then I don't. So you know, it was good that today I did. So anyways, bye.